So let's just start. Let's just start chatting about here what every future ultimate is. But to start that conversation, we can't start at the future ultimates. We have to start by looking at the ultimates we've already had, what they consisted of, how they were put together. So let's start from there. And let's start from the very first one. UCOB. Okay, so UCOB. Well, UCOB was pretty basic in terms of, like, what it was and what it was put together with. So basically, and I'm sure we all know this, but we'll talk about it, just briefly to go through it. UCOB was just the ultimate of the Binding Coils of Bahamut, and it just used the final bosses of each of the raid tiers from that. Pretty simple. It used the main big bosses that everyone would know, final bosses, iconic enough. One, then the other, then the last one, then the first two, both at the same time, then the last one again, but this time he's gold. Pretty simple, not a whole lot to examine there, but we do know, okay, this means raid series are a thing they do. Then we look at Uwu, which took a final main scenario boss, included in other bosses that boss specifically was tied to, put them all in one fight. So you fought Garuda, then Ifrit, and then Titan. Then you did, the lead-in stuff, kind of like how it actually worked in the Praetorium, or in its own separate instance now. And then you fight Ultima. So it's like, okay, so main scenario stuff and bosses that are tied to that main scenario final boss is another thing that we can look at as a possibility. So now we look at T. T does what BCOP did, right? It took, a raid series and made that into an ultimate again. But they did something different with it this time, right? Because they didn't do just the 3 final bosses. Mostly because one of the final bosses was absolute garbage that should never have been put into the game. But putting that aside for a minute, it did use different bosses in it as well. It did use 2 of the final bosses, of course. Alexander it obviously had to use. And Brute Justice was worthy of being used. But it didn't include Manipulator because Manipulator was... No, I'm talking about Manipulator. Manipulator was garbage and should never have been put in the game. And that's why it wasn't directly in T. Because they don't want people remembering that this thing fucking exists. That said, they still put a mechanic from it into Living Liquid's phase. It's awful, but yeah. But it wasn't... So, they used Living Liquid instead of Manipulator. But they didn't stop there either, because they also threw in Cruise Chaser. So it's like, okay. And these 2 notable fan-favorite bosses. So it's like, okay. So what we learned from this one is... Another option for raid series is that they take... not necessarily all of the final bosses from that raid, but fan-favorite bosses from that raid, and put them all together in one fight. And Brute Justice was absolutely a fan-favorite as well, so it kind of works. And now we have Drew, and whatever the fuck is going on here, which we'll go into a little bit, because it definitely opens up some options within the design space as well. So, with Drew, you start out facing dungeon bosses that are tied to the MSQ final boss that, is the main focus. So you start off fighting those dungeon bosses, then you fight that MSQ final boss, kind of how he was, though obviously tuned up because Ultimate. And then you fight one phase of the... What was the phrasing I was going to use for this, for the Nidhogg? The post-MSQ boss. So it used that, and it used 2 phases from that, notably leaving out the actual Draconian phase, but it kept in the Nidstinian phase and used every part of it, including the nails, though it did them as like a different thing in a separate phase that came right after. Then it brings you back to that dungeon boss, and then it brings you to that final MSQ boss again, right? But it brings you that with an aesthetic of another boss that's tied in with this kind of larger story. Well, not the boss, but the atmosphere, you know, because it's fighting in the area. Then the next phase we know is Nidhogg plus Hraesvelgr, so that's that same post-MSQ boss that is still related to the story of all of this, plus the dungeon boss that you fight right before him, which is also tied in. And then, similar to T, the final phase is going to be those bosses all mashed up together into one giant, terrifying thing. We already know Corrupted Thornton is the final phase. I'm sorry if that's a spoiler for anyone, but we know that's where it's going. We know that's just due to the amount of time that each phase is taking. It's not really possible for there to be anything in between Nidhogg and Hraesvelgr and Corrupted Thornton. Fan favorite Nisi. God damn. So, what we've learned from this one is that they can also just outright tie in dungeon bosses that are related to the story that's being told. So, what we've got are raid series and MSQ final bosses are kind of the main things that are being focused on here. So, for my first potential ultimate that could come in the future, and this one, because I'll just say this outright, some of what I'm going to say for these potential ultimates are massively copium. This one is kind of copium, but I think they could do it, because it's been talked about by fans enough times that I think they would consider doing it. So, we're starting back at the very beginning story-wise again for this. And what that gives us is, well, what's the other thing that's a big focus in the MSQ in A Realm Reborn? Garleans. And honestly, I think a Garlean ultimate could be cool. I think we have enough bosses for it. I think there's enough mechanics there that we could tie in. I think that could be a really cool fight. Because look at all the bosses we have. Ratotan, I think, could be included. Though he is no longer a trial, I think he could still be included. We've got Livia, we've got Nero, we've got Gaius, and that's just from the ARR. I think if they did a Garlean ultimate, they'd probably tie in just about all of the Garleans we fought, so we could even see Regula in there. We'd quite likely see... Well, I don't know if I'd necessarily say quite likely, but we'd as possibly see... what was that one guy? I forget his name, but the fucking... I think he's the final boss of Doma Castle. The Rogadin, who's, like, super fucked up because they tried to give him Echo and it didn't work. Anyway, that guy. Plus, we have 2 other fights against extremely prominent Garleans that I think would be sort of the major focus. Varys and Xenos. I think Xenos would probably be the big bad in this situation, but overall, I think there's more than enough material to work with here. It's tied into more than enough main scenarios, including, you could argue, multiple final bosses, that I think absolutely a Garlean ultimate is possible. You're gonna call it now? What are you going to call now? Are you saying you're calling it a knight? Or are you saying you're calling one of the ultimates now? Shadowbringers is next. Omega and Shadowbringers MSQ. So, we'll get to my thoughts on the Shadowbringers ones in a bit here. But we've got to move through Heavensward first. Now, Heavensward, we've done 2 out of 3 that easily make sense, and I would say 4. But we'll get to that one. So, there are 2 ones that I would offer as possibilities that haven't been used yet within Heavensward. First off is pretty obvious. It's the Warring Triad. I think Trial series, while they haven't really used them, you could argue that Ultima was kind of using a Trial series through using If It Grew to Titan. I think you could use that to propel an argument that Trial series are fair game. And plus there's just the fact that the guy who designed the current Ultimate said that he would like to do a Warring Triad one if possible. Like, that was one he was very much considering doing. So, like, I think the Warring Triad is fair game. We can talk about how they would do the Warring Triad after. Because I also want to talk about what would actually, like, conceivably go into some of these. But for now, I'll just say Warring Triad, also a pretty likely ultimate. You ready for some copium? I'm ready for some copium. So, there's one other story, and it really... the story itself for this one kind of ties more into... well, it starts within A Realm Reborn, but it's a lot more focused within Heavensward, but it's also deeply tied within the story of an ultimate that we've already done. I'm talking about the Illuminati. I'm talking about the goblins. Because honestly, they said, and I've already said this once tonight, but they said going into T that they used everything. We all know that that's bullshit. They didn't even use everything from the fights that they did bring in. There were mechanics from each one of those fights that ended up getting left out. Some pretty justifiably, others I think could have been fit in, and I wish they had tried. But they didn't use anything aside from one very specific mechanic from any of the goblin fights in Alexander. They used Shanoa, but that's it. They didn't use any of the rest of Quick Thinks. They didn't use Rat Finks at all. They didn't use, what's his name? Lamebrix? The fucking A10 boss. I think it's Lamebrix. And it's a damn shame. But they can correct this error by giving us an ultimate that is based on the Illuminati. And there's enough of a story there that I think they could do it. The downside is it probably starts off in Brayflox's long stop. Which... but I would be so interested in an ultimate featuring the goblin bosses from Alexander that I'd be willing to accept it. And as copium as it is a theoretically possible ultimate. So we've got the Illuminati here. Now, we can get to Stormblood. So, Stormblood is where some of these conversations get a little bit complicated. And there are a few reasons for that. So, Willie brings up the obvious one. They like to do raid series, And following the pattern of Raid Series MSQ, Raid Series MSQ, next up would be Raid Series. Next up would be Omega. And that's what most people are predicting is going to be the ultimate in 6.3. So Omega is a pretty obvious one to put on the list. And I have a Google Doc up where I'm typing up the list. Now, the obvious other thing to talk about would then be Shinryu, right? Because MSQ final boss. A lot of these are based around MSQ final bosses. So I'm going to type out Shinryu as part of the list, but let me offer some perspective on why I don't think a Shinryu Ultimate makes sense basically ever. Oh, by the way, I forgot boss in the Garlean one. And that would be, well, actually, that's a good part of this explanation. So, the thing is, who is realistically tied to Shinryu in terms of other things in the MSQ? Or, really, who's tied to Shinryu elsewhere, like, anywhere? Well, Shinryu is tied to Omega because we awoke Omega to begin with to fight Shinryu. No, Willie, weren't you listening? Shinoa was part of the whole goblin explanation. But Shinryu was part of... Shinryu's attached to Xenos, so Shinryu is tied to the Garlean stuff as well, potentially. And through that, you know, Tsukiyomi is also very much tied to the Garlean stuff. And if they would ever do a Garlean Ultimate, it would not surprise me at all if Tsukiyomi was a part of that. I think that's what makes the most sense. Because if you try to do something with just Stormblood MSQ stuff... Oh. I don't think you did, but that's cute. I like it. But Tsukiyomi is, well, that's just it. Tsukiyomi would kind of be tied to Shinryu because they're both bosses that are tied to Garleans that are part of the Stormblood MSQ. But the problem that you get there is that there's not really anything else you can work with that's just within that. You're kind of stuck there. Like, who else would you reasonably fight? I'm legitimately struggling to think of things. God, were there even mid-patch MSQ trial or MSQ dungeons in fucking Stormblood? And did any of them matter? Or were they all just kind of filler? Drowned City, kind of, eh. Hell's Lid was different. That. The Burn, but the Burn's kind of later. Yeah, sure, I'm willing. Just in BCS voice. But like...
Alright, how bad is my sound quality?
It's not spectacular, but it's fine.
Sweet, sweet, real bad. Alright. Oh my god, it's terrible. What do you mean it's...
It's tolerable. I've heard worse. Feel bad that I've heard worse, but I've heard worse. Um, but yeah, okay, so I really don't think there's anything else that you can really work with in terms of MSQ bosses that, or yeah, really just any bosses that would tie in with a Shinryu Tsukiyomi ultimate that's based purely around Stormblood. I think
The only reason that I'm like, hold the phone is because Ukab exists and it was twin, male, and Bahamut.
that's true, and they did manage to make that work, but
Uh-huh.
that's still 3 bosses. I have 2. The only way I can really get a third is if we either bring in... Well, we'd have to bring in, like, a human character to do it. And you can't really do that and then try to follow the
you
UCOB
mean
model.
Xenos?
Well, you could do Xenos, you could do the final boss of Doma Castle, if I'm remembering him correctly.
Boss of Doma Castle. Yeah.
You could do one of those, but it's like... You're stuck in either a 4-phase fight that doesn't really have a whole lot going for it, or you've got to, like, have somehow a phase that is, like, 2 of them together as well, like they did in UCOB. But with one of them being a human and the other probably being Tsukiyomi,
You could also utilize Yatsuyu.
you could, but I don't know how capable in terms of combat she is on her own, because we never really
Also-
fought her on her own.
Also, with Susano and Lakshmi, those are also a part of the MSQ that you could utilize technically.
You could, but I feel like they're not tied in enough with what would be going on with Tsukiyomi and
Yatsuyu and Susano, you would be able to make
Yeah,
that correlation fairly easy.
yeah, Susano, I think there's an argument there. I don't think Lakshmi works ever.
No,
but
I
think
just
you
was
could
bringing her
use
up as an
yeah,
option, but
Yeah,
I don't
I
think that
think-
she would be involved in an ultimate.
yeah. I think with Susano, you do create the possibility there for like a fight against the Kami, basically.
Yeah.
And that could work, but it still feels like the weakest option when if you throw Shinryu and even Tsukiyomi into different ultimates, they end up working a lot better, I feel like. So, and this is kind of where I'm going with it, because I could see them easily doing an Omega ultimate that is basically only against Omega, except for phases against the things that Omega directly fought, that being Shinryu and Midgard Sormer.
You know what's actually really funny about that? I was thinking Omega just being Omega by itself. Like, you fight, say we start with Beetle, beat Beetle, then it's male-female phase, then it's the final Omega, the second phase. I'm spoiling fights, by the way, I'm just going to say that off rip. Anyway, the final phase of O12S, and then you
Pretty
have
good.
your, perfect Omega, whatever you want, your golden Omega, your glowing Omega.
Okay, hold on. We've got to stop here for a second because it looks like Rin actually got past Death of the Heavens. And I want to see if this means that Rin not only got past Death of the Heavens, but got to the next phase, or if they wiped to the Enraged still. So I'm going to watch this clip really quick.
Okay. Like Ren with Lama Todd and shit, right?
Isn't Todd in Happiest Group, I thought?
Is Todd in Happy's group? Is that Xenos? Who the fuck is in Todd's group? I don't know. This is the first ultimate that I have not been playing Final Fantasy during.
Right.
So I've been on hiatus from Final Fantasy for longer than I wish it was.
Oh god damn, it looks like they actually, Oh, they didn't quite get through. Oh, that's so close, though. They even caster LB2'd by the looks of it. Alright, so anyway, So, in terms of Omega, I've definitely had the thought of they could very easily do a purely against Omega fight, and it would be very funny, but I think for how cinematic they've been getting with Ultimates, and it just keeps getting more and more, I don't think they want us fighting just different versions of a single boss, even if they do have more than enough versions of that single boss to actually do an Ultimate on its own with.
Unless they pull Beetle out of Omega Ultimate, right? They do. It's a working title.
God, I'd be so disappointed with that.
They pull Beetle out. Hear me out, because you're about to get excited. They pull Beetle out and put Beetle in MSQ Ultimate with Shinryu instead.
That's interesting. That would be interesting. They could, you know,
So
they could
instead
do
of having
something
Beetle,
like
it's
that.
male, female. Maybe there's a cameo of Beetle, but you don't fight the Beetle because he's busy in Shinryu.
But then that definitely doesn't leave enough Omega to have a purely Omega.
No, it's not going to be purely Omega at that point. Now we're pulling, you know, Midgard Zomer.
Yeah. Well, I think we pulled Midgard Sormer almost no matter what for this.
Yeah, I also, this is heavy copium because I know that Kefka can't be in fucking the Warring Triad because they're in completely
go
different
on with that
sections.
because
I would
honestly,
love-
I disagree. I think it
I
is
would
still
love
extremely
Kefka-
likely.
The reason why I highly doubt it is because, like you said, they're getting more and more cinematic with it. It would not make sense in Final Fantasy for Kefka to be involved with the Warring Triad in an Ultimate. Specifically for the fact that 2 separate expansions, no correlation in Final Fantasy XIV whatsoever. It's Kefka is a villain from another place, and the Warring Triad are primals from Mericidia. So Kefka's not even from our planet. So it wouldn't make sense in context of Final Fantasy XIV. Now, as a Final Fantasy nerd, of course, I would love Warring Triad plus Kefka, but I can't get that and be happy as a Final Fantasy XIV fan, because then it feels like I'm being cheated. It's just fan service at that point, you know what I mean?
So, I hear you, but here's why I disagree. Because all of the bosses from the Omega Raid series still have their own lore as to where they came from. It's different versions of where things are, but it's just still a matter of fact that the Kefka that we fight there has his own Warring Triad. We still have Warring Triad mechanics that are tied into it. It's just his own version of it. But I think that's still enough of a tie that they could justify saying, you know what, let's make this like a Kefka Ultimate and give him our Warring Triad instead of his own much weaker version of it. I think it's, and I agree that it's very copium, but I think it's possible.
That's a reach because, like, just, that's like me saying I have a Jack of Spades, so it might as well be a Jack of Hearts. It's the same thing. If we're playing spades, it is not the same thing. You know that's a terrible analogy if you haven't played spades, but that's a great analogy if you have.
Yeah, I get the gist here.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, again, I do think that it's pretty copium.
Oh yeah,
But
no,
I also already
with you.
But I already went all in on the possibility of, you know what? I'd like to see an Illuminati Ultimate, so fuck it. I'm fine with doing the copium discussions here.
Right now, basically the way I'm looking at it right now is our next X-Team
Warring Triad is... Well,
Ultimates are already planned out unless they start doing a third one. If they start doing a third one every expansion, which high-key copium, but is possible with their budget going up at the rate it has been, if they start doing 3, we can start getting these quirky ultimates that everybody wants. Like, I was fucking huffing the wildest copium before T was announced. Like, we're getting fucking Hildebrand ultimate. That's the move. They have to do it. They can't. We're not getting Hildebrand in the expansion. We're gonna get an ultimate for it instead.
Here's the thing. I think the way they've been going with how cinematic it's been getting, and the fact that they've been willing to tie in more different elements from different things that do still all end up connecting within their own stories, but from so many different aspects of that story, it's like, I think we can actually say that they could go a little wilder with it. They don't have to necessarily follow the MSQ final boss as the other one pattern. They could go into trial series, they could go into, tying together other long-term stories, and we'll get to that with one of the ones that I've got upcoming as well. But getting back to it, there is obviously one other Shadowbringer story that they could do, that having mentioned the Warring Triad, having mentioned Trial series, it's very obvious. Four Lords, I think they could do it. I think it would fit.
That'd be an amazing ultimate too. That would be a phenomenal ultimate. Especially since Jinpu didn't really get to shine as much as I wanted him to.
I just want to actually fight Koryu, and we didn't get the chance to. So this one is itself a little bit of copium on my end, but if we're ever, they could correct it with a Four Lords ultimate, which is why I'm hoping for it. Plus, I mean, doing that, it would be able to feel that cinematic, edge to it. I think they could do it very well.
Tenzin, it is I.
Sheathe your sword, I beg of you.
That's one of my favorite fights from Stormblood, dude. Not even gonna lie. Not even gonna
It's
hold
actually
you.
so good.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, even though it follows the same kind of design philosophy as, Byakko did, it's still... Would I say it's my favorite of the Extreme Trials from that expansion? Not counting Shinryu. I probably would, because Byakko is kind of crap.
Oh, no, you're not going to do that to Byakko. Byakko is a good fight.
Byakko had some good ideas, but that intermission, man, I can't forgive that intermission.
There's, multiple ways that I grade Extreme Trials. Prague, first clear, farm. Byakko had a solid Z on fucking farm. I hated farming that fucking fight, but frogging it and first clear felt so good. It was so good to go through that the first time, but every time after that, terrible. I fucking it was bad.
Yeah, but I think it's and it depends on how you weight them, but the fact that you do re-clear, more times than you prog a fight, obviously.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
the fact that it's such an egregious thing within the farm aspect of it, it's it knocks the whole fight down so much. When otherwise, it does have a lot of good ideas. I do like it, and I do think they could actually make it work very well in an ult. And you know what?
Yeah, absolutely.
They could even have that phase come back and work pretty well within an ultimate, to be quite honest. That intermission could work with a lot more tied into it, obviously, but they could use that intermission as part of an intermission phase within an ultimate, and it would work very well.
Yeah, no, just let us use action. Have us fight something while we're falling from the sky. Don't have us skydive.
Yeah, really. Okay, so then we get to Shadowbringers. Now, Shadowbringers has its own kind of stuff we need to talk about here with it. So let's go with the easy one first. Obviously, an Eden ultimate is something that they will do eventually. There are so many different directions they could go with an Eden ultimate. And we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
That, bro.
Yeah, there's
Eden
so
ultimate.
many different directions. But we'll talk about that a bit later. For now, let's just say definitely going to be an Eden ultimate at some point, and when they do it, it's gonna be awesome.
That's gonna be, dude. Can we do Eden ultimate after we do the conversation about MSQ for Shadowbringers? Because the Eden one is gonna take forever to talk about.
Oh yeah, well there are other ideas here I have though that also probably take a while to talk about. But yeah, we'll get to all of it. Trust me, I want this to be a very long conversation. We'll get to all of it.
This is make a YouTube channel. That's what this conversation is about to be.
Yeah, pretty much. I might, because I actually did want to take the whole thing and then post it to YouTube. It's very likely going to need to be broken up if I want to do that. And I'm fine doing that, but yeah. So Eden Ultimate, for now, we'll just say definitely going to happen at some point. Looking forward to how they end up doing it. So from there, let's go to Endwalk, or sorry, well, we'll get to my discussion on that one. Shadowbringers MSQ Ultimate.
Easy. This is the easiest walkthrough of my easy, bro.
So, talk me through what your ideas are, and then I'll go through what mine are.
Bro, easy. It's the Ascians, bro. Easy. It's so easy. I could even come up with the phase transition into fucking Golden Hades or whatever you want to call them. Easy.
Well, so that's the part where I start disagreeing, because I do agree that an Ascian Ultimate overall makes sense as this kind of like MSQ Ultimate for here, but where do you actually cut it off? Because you could cut it off as like just the stuff kind of within Shadowbringers, but I think that's kind of boring.
Well,
I think you could go as far as Zodiark. You could go as far as Zodiark. You could bring back in like a full-on Ascian Prime La Habrea phase. There's so much that you could do.
I was thinking going backwards, not forward. So
I think you could do both.
The main reason why I don't think we're gonna go forward is because Ultimates are a community thing, and they seem to be doing older shit by multiple years, so it's not like, oh, I just started playing this game and the streamer's doing this Ultimate thing, I'm X amount of years behind, what are they doing? And then you have Endwalker spoiled for you. You know, like...
So, that's true, but on the other side of things, like, we have to consider a few parts to this. First off, if they do this, like, the quote-unquote Shadowbringers MSQ Ultimate isn't gonna happen until, like, 8.1 at the earliest.
Yeah.
So it's already going to be like 4 years past Endwalker by the time we get to it. Plus, I mean, it could easily be justifiable as like, well, what about spoiling people? Well, but you're not even spoiling close to like the actual final, like, where things go within Endwalker. It's a little bit of a spoiler.
Also, the other reason is why...
it feels like a bigger spoiler than it is.
The other reason why I flinch like that is, we'll talk about that during Endwalker. That's cute. Because where do you go with an Endwalker MSQ Ultimate if you're not going to pull... Spoiler alert, red flag, flash it on the screen, you're going to have to chop and screw this shit anyway, blam, blam, blam. Heidel and Zodiark and Endsinger would be, you know, the best things to utilize for an Ultimate in that scenario. So
and this is where I kind of, like, I say at some point they almost have to diverge from just using final MSQ bosses and from, like, MSQ of X number of years ago as guaranteed being the theme, because there are just so many ways that the bosses that tie into these MSQs tie in better with other Ultimate ideas that work better with the more cinematic direction they've been going, that I don't think they can sustainably keep using that as the way they do it. I think at some point they have to diverge, and honestly, it makes the most sense to me to do it, like, right with Stormblood, but absolutely by the time we hit the Shadowbringers one, they've got to start diverging. They've got to, because honestly, I think... and this is going to sound kind of weird, but I think that Heidelin would actually fit in pretty well to a Ascian Ultimate.
Yeah.
Because she
I see what you're saying, but like, dog, you gonna say that coming off of Dragon Song right now? You're gonna say that they have to diverge coming off of Dragon Song?
Well, it's because Dragon Song shows the potential that they have if they do diverge. Because
if you think about it,
because they haven't diverged here, but at the same time, they've brought in so many other elements that it shows that bringing in those other elements can enhance so much. And the next step to this, to me at least, seems like, okay, what if we loosen the restriction on it being the final MSQ boss? Let those be freed up for places where they might fit better cinematically.
The Ulu technically diverged from the MSQ while still staying confined to the MSQ, because a lot of those mechanics and situations with the primals weren't involved in the MSQ as much. And then you have La Habrea during the phase transition, which, great cameo. but everybody forgets about him because you just melee LB him and he disappears. But like that, you know, you're pulling from multiple elements with Uwu, which was our
Well, you are, but you
MSQ1.
aren't, because those were already part of Ultima to begin with, and they were part of, you know, all those fights were within the MSQ. It's all, and as Trials even, it's like, it's already, it was almost crafted to be a perfect thing to make an Ultimate out of, because of how tied together all those things are within the same category of things even. So it's very easy to put all of them together in that way.
I just wanted to shout out Laha one time because everybody forgets that he exists in Hulu.
And as far as that goes, like, I'd love to see him actually find a way to play a proper role in an Ascian Ultimate.
Yeah,
so,
no, I want...
But, like, there's so many things that could go into an Ascian Ultimate.
With an Ascian Ultimate, the main reason why I'm like, I'd rather save Zodiark for something else is mainly because how many phases is this fucking Ultimate gonna be? If I want Laha Brea, Nabrialis, I want, you know, basic
I don't think
bitch
Nabrialis
Hades.
makes it. As much as I'd like it, I don't think Nabrialis makes it.
I think he does. He played a very important part in the MSQ throughout. I think he absolutely does. If you're gonna do he made it into Hades. He made it into Hades Extreme.
He did, but I don't know. I feel like if they do an Ascian Ultimate, they almost have to focus around... Because, like, he did play a big role, like, back in A Realm Reborn, but A Realm Reborn plays such a small role in comparison to all of the other uses of the Ascians. Like, if any non-sundered Ascian deserves a role, it's Fandaniel. And even him, I don't know if there's a role for him unless they use Zodiark.
Yeah. I don't know. I know Emmett needs to be in it. Elidibus needs to be in it.
Yeah, those two are basically mandatory. It has to have Hades. It has to have Warrior of Light.
Laha. Like, you have 3 Ascians.
Yeah,
right
it pretty
there.
much has to use,
you know,
like, Ascian Prime,
are we
Laha.
talking? Are we talking, like, you know, our 4 to 5 phases, or are we trying to drag this bitch out for, like, 20, 30 minutes?
Okay, but then let's go back to what we're dealing with right now with Drew, where depending on how you count, well, let's see. Vault, Thornton 1, Nidstinian, Eyes of Nidstinian, if you really want to count it going back to Vault, Thornton 2, and then we still have Nidhogg plus Race Velger plus Corrupted Thornton. So, if you really want to count it this way, Drew's an 8-phase fight.
Well, Drew's not a longer Ultimate by much, though, at the same time.
It is, but it isn't. It isn't
what I mean,
because
like...
they've checkpointed off the first round of Vault, which does make a difference in it.
No, I don't think the check... I personally don't think the check... Everybody's like...
I'm not upset about the checkpoint. Having seen... Because here's the thing that I want to talk about with this one, is knowing what's left and knowing that there's no way that any of these phases that remain are less than 2.5 minutes. We're already at... Hold on. It was 11, 14, 2.5... Wait. No, 8, 11, 2.5. This is minimum 16 minutes just from the checkpoint on, and that's at minimum. There's honestly no way that Corrupted Thornton is only 2.5 minutes either. So this is already, like, probably closer to 18 minutes without counting the Vault stuff, which is an extra, like, 2.5 to 3 minutes.
Sounds about right.
So, if you're counting all of that together, this is arguably the longest Ultimate we've ever had.
I don't think it's arguable. I think it actually is the longest Ultimate we've had.
The only reason I say it's arguable is because counting it this way, we almost kind of have to count the fake versions of the Ultima, like, of the primal phases in Ultima as well. And the Yeah,
Oh, I see
like
what
the
you.
unawoken
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
because you did have to
yeah.
prog through those, and that is like basically different versions of those phases. It's different content. It's different mechanics that they had to program in.
Yeah.
The way you
I don't know.
prog it is such that you don't deal with them every time, but if you add in that extra content, there's probably an extra like 3 or 4 minutes of primal phases that you don't see in the final like run through where you clear that fight, but they are still part of that fight, kind of in the same way that the stuff before the checkpoint in Drew is still part of the fight. So if you add those on to Ultima, it is actually closer to that longer length again, but because those parts aren't part of the clear and you only do them, honestly, if you're progging it blind anyway.
Yeah. Now, if you have any
Then it's
knowledge
hard to
of
count them.
Uru,
Yeah, exactly.
you don't unawoken primals. Because
Yeah,
then Ultima comes out as just like, by the way, have a great night.
exactly.
Good night. Yeah, no, but I think.
But even
think
still,
keep-
Drew is longer.
I think keeping to the expansion for MSQ isn't hard. Mainly because a lot of them have kept to the expansion prior to the post patch, so it's gone to the 0.0. So
Well, I mean, we have
was-
one example.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Well, no,
But
because
yeah.
Dragon Song.
Dragon Song had the post
goes
patch.
over. Yeah, it goes to the post patch. But that's what I mean. Like, if you look at it didn't go to the post patch. With Dragon Song, that opens up the potential to go to the post patch. So with it going to the post patch, you have the ability to pull more content than we had originally expected.
That's
So if you
true,
look
but
at-
I still
if you
think
look
like
at- if
you
you look
have
at-
more to work with though in Drew that ties in very well than you do, I think, with any of the other expansions. Because honestly, like, if I look at the patch, like, because Drew does as well as it does also by drawing from dungeons, and frankly, that's because it can do that because the dungeons tie back into that story very well. Whereas with Stormblood and Shadowbringers, honestly, they don't really. Like, the only time that I've seen a dungeon really tie in properly well since in a way that could work is Ideascope?
Yeah,
Or
Ideascope.
Ideascape?
Yeah.
Whatever it's called.
I know what you're talking about.
Pre-Hydaelyn, yeah, that.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Like, even Final Day, I don't think you really could turn any of that well into Ultimate You could maybe turn... Actually, yeah, you know what? I take that back. You could definitely put, at the very least, that final boss in as, like, a pre-phase right before Endsinger.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know. I still feel like... And I'm not saying they couldn't do it. I just feel like I'd like to see them branch off of it because I think the cinematic experiences you can create if you don't limit yourself to that. Like, if you actually create a full-on Ascian Ultimate that has even Hydaelyn and Zodiark, as well as Warrior of Light, Hades, and, probably uses Hades tie-ins to the other ones to bring them back, or maybe even, like, does a little more with them on that front.
I feel like the community would be in an uproar because Emmett didn't get the attention that he deserved. That's what I think would. That's
not a terrible point.
I think that they would have to do damage control if they were just like, oh yeah, by the way, Hydaelyn's the final boss of Hades Ultimate.
Well, it wouldn't be Hydaelyn. You would finish that one on Zodiark, I think. They would find a way to be like...
Yeah.
Because it
wouldn't
would
be called Hades Ultimate, but
no, it
that's
would be
how everybody would look at it.
Yeah, if they announce it like that, it depends on how they announce it though, I think. And if they have it as like, okay, this is, and what I've always been calling it in my head is just Tales of the Unsundered.
Yeah.
Because really, that's what it comes down to, is you're fighting the Unsundered Asians, and then, like, with Zodiark in the picture, you can now also accumulate into, okay, now all of this power has been accumulated by Zodiark, and he's creating, like, your final phase.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I high-key wanted him to be fully formed when we fought him. This was kind of some bullshit.
And that's the other reason that I think that this is, like, a possible thing, because I guarantee you're not alone with that. I know I feel that way. There are a lot of people who would have loved to see a fully formed, proper Zodiark, and I think the only way we get it is if he actually is, like, the final boss of an ultimate. But I think they could do it that way.
Or Peep Endsinger can make him the final phase of an ultimate. That would be fucking dope. With all the shit that Endsinger was doing, that would be fucking dope.
Here's the other thing, is Endsinger Extreme has a little bit soured me on the idea of Endsinger really even being, like, getting an ultimate to itself. That might be heresy of a statement all on its own, but seeing Endsinger Extreme, there's not enough there to really make this feel appropriate as a final, which sucks because...
Wait, hot take then. How do you feel about Ultima?
Ultima, so... It's weird because, honestly, they did manage to expand it enough, but then they've also now retroactively made even Ultima's, like, story tie in better than it ever did before with the Ultimate, which I still think was just an absolutely brilliant move. Have you done Ultima since they updated? Yeah, so they actually now have the, like, the LB mechanic, like, tied into that phase. So, like, you use your LB2, and then you get, even though it's only a 4-man fight, you get an LB3 to use to finish off Ultima, like, in the story mode Ultima fight now.
That's actually kind of fucking dope, but...
And, like, even all the other changes they made to it as well just made it so much more interesting.
Looking at the Ultima Extreme, you know what I mean? Like, you're looking at the Endsinger Extreme. If you look at the Ultima Extreme, like...
It's a fair point.
Hell, man, you look at Bahamut versus Ukab, and you're just like, what the fuck?
See, but in both of those cases, they are very much benefited by the fact that, especially in the Ultimates, they're tying in the mechanics of other things. And credit there, I have to say, because it does defeat the argument a little bit, that, yeah, I mean, they'd have to do the same thing with Endsinger, is find a way to tie in the mechanics of the others, but also they have a much harder time trying to do that. Like, with Bahamut, it even makes sense story-wise because, well, Bahamut had them both in his thrall anyway, so this was a thing that could have happened. Similarly, Ultima had literally absorbed all of the primals to have them at its disposal for putting together mechanics, and that was even the case within, you know, the Ultima Extreme, where it was like, yeah, Ultima itself actually isn't doing a lot of the more interesting stuff here, but because it ties in the other stuff anyway, there's enough for a proper fight here.
Okay.
But with Endsinger doesn't really have a proper link to Zodiark or to Hydaelyn.
No, but Endsinger has a fucking ball of fucking, like, destroyed planets and shit, which could be utilized from all of the, like, despair over the, how long? 12,000 years? I don't remember off the top.
I think it's something like that.
Yeah, but all that despair, the amount of, even if you just say fuck it, nah, Zodiark and Hydaelyn get their own shebang-a-bang, you know what I mean? Fucking Endsinger can pull some shit. Like, there is some shit that can be used there. The Dragon Star was destroyed. If Midgar isn't in Omega for whatever reason, he can be there. You know, if
Yeah.
Kefka, technically, if Kefka isn't there, with what we learned, he technically could be there because he could be one of the planets that got destroyed.
Yeah, no, this is all true. They could,
Yeah.
they could tie in a lot with that.
Amount of things that she can pull, and it wouldn't be like Kefka with the Warring Triad where it's like grasping at straws. It would actually be like, that makes sense.
I mean, I don't think it's
But can we grasp at
that
straws
much more.
instead?
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily that much more logical to tie in these other things to Endsinger as it would be to tie in Kefka with the Warring Triad, but I can definitely see where you're coming from with it.
Yeah, let the record show. I want Kefka to be with the Warring Triad. Why?
Yeah.
I gotta be the devil's advocate and be the hyper realist.
But then it creates another problem with Warring Triad, and I'll get to Giz's comment in a second here. I just want to make this comment first, is otherwise, how do they really, like, what do they do for a final phase of the Warring Triad without Kefka? Because the only other thing that could really have made sense for doing that is Thornton. Like, they could try to do some kind of Tower of the Gods thing, but it wouldn't feel, it feels so weird to not have, like, a real proper, like, final figure there. And we've already used the potential other final figure here.
I mean, they have shown that they're very creative with Perfect Alexander. I think that we can
That's true. They'd still probably be able to make it, but I don't know. I'm still kind of iffy on it. They've shown that it's possible. They could do it. I'd like to see them do something else.
Yeah, Perfect Alex. I just want to gas up Perfect Alex because whoever on the dev team was like, bro, just make him into fucking Power Rangers. That guy needs a raise. I don't care who it is, he needs a raise.
Okay, so the AoE that Endsinger uses for 5-head is actually pulled from the first area of Dead Ends, same attack name, and there's flavor text about drawing on the power or whatever. Honestly, I also think that a little bit applies to End's song, doesn't it? With the, like, I guess not really, no, that's too much of a stretch. But, like, that mechanic kind of reminds me of the, of the circles thing that the final boss does. But yeah, so we have the 3 worlds from Dead Ends, Omega's home, and the dragons. Honestly, this almost frees up enough real estate, like, just with that, to let Hydaelyn and Zodiark flow into another more suitable ultimate for them. And have Endsinger...
That's why I switched my narrative. That's why I automatically switched my narrative. I was like, you know what, you could put Hydaelyn and Zodiark somewhere else. Because she's got enough real estate to do whatever the fuck she wants. She's building a motel.
Yeah, and honestly, like, this is enough for me to actually... And I almost feel a little weird doing it, but I'll do it anyway. I will put... what do I want to call this? I'll just call it Endsinger / Final Days on my Google Doc that I have here. I'm going to include that on my list now. I honestly was thinking about just not even, like, including it on my list, but y'all have convinced me, because actually, like, with this stuff, there is enough, and also, oh my god, drawing on the Omega world and the Dragon world. I mean, it feels a little cheap in a sense, but at the same time, they're already doing it with Drew, so, like, all bets are off there anyway.
Yep.
However, in that discussion, we've skipped right to Endwalker after talking about Eden and Ascian. There's one other story within Shadowbringers that obviously makes sense as something they could use. Because there is a trial series in Shadowbringers. And honestly, there's a good amount of content in that trial series. I think the weapons can make for a pretty good ultimate if utilized properly here.
I have no comment on the weapons.
Really? None?
No.
Did you like do them?
Oh, I absolutely did them, but just the idea of Eden and Astians, bro, I'm like, yeah, man, like Sapphire wasn't even a real fight.
Yeah, honestly, like, in comparison to those, weapons feels tame. And in another sense of things, you could almost tie, like, if you really wanted to, the weapons back into, like, a Garlean ultimate. I think that has some potential as well, if you want to go, like, this is a council fight for the entire time you're doing it up until you fight Xenos. Which would be a cool as fuck way to do an ultimate, and I'd love to see it.
I would die on the inside if you have to do Ruby weapon and Emerald weapon at the same time, and then do Diamond and Sapphire. Bro, I'd kill myself.
I think they'd try to fix... So I think the way they would try to do it is, like... They'd probably have, like, a couple Sapphire mechanics as, like, an introduction transmission thing into the phase. And then they've got, like... They do it kind of like they've done with the Vault bosses in Drew, where it's, like, you're fighting two of them, and then the third is just kind of off to the side. If they were to mix them in with the Garlean one, that is. And then the third one's just kind of doing its own kind of mechanics. And then I think the way they would probably put that together... God, I wanted to say that they would use the extra phase from... Like, they would use Diamond as the one on the outside, but honestly, it actually makes more sense with how Ruby's nail stuff works to make it be... You fight Emerald and Diamond, and then Ruby's on the outside. Okay. Giz, that actually brings up another idea I had, that I was actually going to totally forget about.
I feel like my brain would melt out of my fucking ear. Just thinking of a weapon's ultimate hurts my head.
So, Giz has brought up another kind of idea that I had. And it's kind of weird, but it's like... In the same way that there are enough different versions of Omega to make for its own ultimate, the story of Hermes and Meteon has enough different bosses well, mostly Hermes, but it does end with fighting Meteon, that you could almost make an ultimate just out of, like, Hermes and Meteon alone.
Oh, absolutely. You absolutely could.
Like, you fight, like, the Dungeon Hermes, you fight Amon, you fight Zodiark. Now, putting Zodiark in there does kind of take away from having Zodiark in any kind of other ultimate, where I do think he'd be better utilized, but you could do it. But then I can't even classify that as necessarily a separate one, because if they did it, I still think that would have to end with Endsinger, and then it ties back into the Endsinger idea.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a little bit where... And then... There's another idea there, but I'm gonna describe my other thing first. And then we get into the other part of this discussion, because this has all just been the setup. The ideas of... What are all the possible, like, overarching settings that they could use within these ultimates? Each of these has, like, a number of different configurations that they could actually use for putting together the bosses of some of these. So that's still the other part of the discussion that we haven't had yet, And because it's the most interesting, we're going to start with Eden when we do that.
Oh, we're gonna be here for a while. Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah, and honestly, like... Okay, this is going to sound almost like a kind of weird idea, but roll with me here for a second. There's definitely too much to discuss in this to, like, have this conversation entirely within one night.
But we're gonna make it happen by speed running through a lot of topics.
Or we could come back to this a few different times, almost make, like...
A series?
Yeah, like a series on it. Like, bordering on this almost becoming a podcast or some bullshit.
I'd be down to start a podcast with you.
Honestly, like, the idea just came to me. Well, I was kind of planning on doing it in a sense anyway, of revisiting them, like, one by one. But I like the idea as I have it now better, because the idea I had before of revisiting them one by one was we have the discussion, we get through, like, all of the possible boss configuration ideas tonight, and then, like, I go through one by one in later streams and, like, flesh those out with mechanics. But I think that's a little bit much anyway, and honestly, there's so much to talk about just within, like, the discussions of, like, what boss configurations could work within things, that it's like, you could make a series just out of that.
Yeah.
And tie in a little bit of, like, mechanic speculation on how they would mix things. But, like, I think that's almost a more interesting way to do it.
I just need a reminder of the order of bosses. And I think I have a pretty good idea.
Pokemon replaced with Ultimate Crack Knight. It's starting to seem
Great. It was Leviathan.
But I also have
Titan,
Fridays open, so we
right?
can make that the new thing.
And then the other four were the next set, right?
Sorry, go over that for me one more time.
Leviathan, Titan, and then the next set was the other four, right? Because it was Ifrit, Garuda, Ramu, and Shiva.
Yeah, so it was Ramu, then Ifrit and Garuda, then birds, and then Shiva.
Okay. So, what if Shiva and Titan absorbed the elements from the other primals?
So
To tone down the amount of just Jesus Christ that would have to happen for this fight to work.
So, there's an idea there. I want to get back to it when we get there, but I first want to tie off the discussion of other possible overarching ideas, because there is one other suggestion that Giz offered in the chat that I want to kind of tie in with another possibility for things, is that these also aren't all of the stories we've had. We've also had all of the 24-man stories, and some of those have bosses that could be put into pretty good ultimates. But that said, these are also 24-man bosses. It's harder to tailor these into 8-man kind of fights. That's not to say I want to knock off the possibility, but I want to sort of just put it in its own category of, like, 24-mans as an idea, and then we can get to it kind of later.
This sentence I'm about to have fun with, and I'm about to piss off most of the Final Fantasy community. Are you ready for this?
Let's go.
Yo, Nier Ultimate, let's go!
Oh, God.
Yes, dude.
If they'd done a better job with those
I'm so
raids,
glad-
I'd be down with it. But, like, God.
Okay, first off, you're not going to tell me that the fight design was the problem with those raids, because the fight design, music, the dungeons themselves were really okay. The story, however...
So, aesthetically top-notch, because Nier stuff is always aesthetically top-notch. I'm not going to deny that one. The story, obviously, the biggest problem with the Nier raids. I would say the straight-up fight design was very hit or miss. There were some fights that were really, really good. There were some fights that it's like, why did you even bother putting this in? First boss of Paradigm, first boss of Tower of Paradigm, whatever the fuck.
Paradigm Breach. I liked that first fight. I thought that first fight, the design of the boss was kind of but that's a near, what is that, Drakengard, actually?
I think that was... My memory's fading, my memory's not serving me particularly well in this exact moment, but, I think it was more like a shade from, like, Replicant style Nier. I think, if I'm remembering things correctly, that's kind of what it reminded me of, but I wouldn't want to necessarily be quoted on that, because I haven't looked at the boss in a hot minute, and I could be entirely wrong. But I think, if my memory is serving me properly, that it kind of looked like a shade, and we'll not get into Nier lore about any of that shit right now. But that's what I think it looks like, if I'm remembering any of it correctly, which I might not be.
It's been so long since I've been involved in anything Nier that I genuinely don't know, but I'm like 65% sure that it's a Drakengard reference for that first boss there.
Tower
Confident
at
64.
Paradigm...
I said 65 at first and bumped it down to a 64 because I'm very on the fence about that.
Oh my god, do we have to have an ad here?
Oh, we're gonna run an ad? I don't know, I'm subscribed.
Okay, no, I put on an MTQ video so I can actually look at this boss. Yeah, so I'm seeing like a lot of darkness and then the yellow accents. Near replicant. Just show me near replicant stuff, honestly. I'll be able to fucking see enemies quickly enough. But I'm like 90% sure that that is what I remember. Oh my god,
What's the name of the boss?
Oh my god, it's on here somewhere. Knave of Hearts.
Well, here's how to know.
God, my mic sounds like actual garbage.
Oh my god, my fucking lights fell.
We start a podcast, the first check that I get cut, I am buying a fucking Blue Yeti or something.
Yeah, it's a pretty nice thing to have, I will say.
Shout out Blue Yeti. Because I totally convinced my ex who started streaming to get a Blue Yeti, and it's pretty fucking great. Very jealous.
When looking at his work, group no.
Oh my god. Could we... Oh.
But so do
Okay, yeah, no, I just pulled up... I finally found a part of one of these Nier videos that shows shades. And yeah, this thing is absolutely like a shade from Nier Replicant.
Okay. So, I stand corrected. You see, I said 64%. It looks like it looks like this is exactly like me honing in Lost Ark. It says 64%, but you know it's gonna fail, because unless it's 100, it's 0.
Yep. Really enjoy Red Girl and Tower Last Boss. But when I think about the rest of it, just, nah. Hansel... Yeah, honestly... Okay, yeah, Hansel and Gretel aren't too bad either, but you never got them. That's the thing with me, is like...
Okay, Red
I
Girl was
understand Hansel and Gretel as a boss, and honestly, I do very much like them. And yeah. Wait, were Hansel and Gretel... Oh my... Yeah, they might have done... I need to fucking replay Replicant. That's the reason that this was a bad idea, is that I need to replay Replicant. Because... And I need to get through my last Pokemon Nuzlocke to get to it. But, like, I need to replay Replicant.
Sorry.
No, this is still a good idea. But, like, I'm just realizing the other thing that I have done. But I'm fine with it. So, anyway, I think at this point, we're good to say this is where, you know, we've covered all of the general ideas of what things could be ultimates. I think we've covered
Yeah.
just about everything reasonable. The list I have here is Garleans, Warring Triad. I've got my full Copium Illuminati on this list. I've got Omega, I've got Shinryu, I've got Four Lords, I've got Eden, I've got Asians, I've got the weapons, I've got Endsinger and Final Days, and then I've got 24 Mans.